been in trial for a week and a half continuously before that. And I'm a little bit tired. So I'm going to appreciate the half day off on Thursday. So anyway, so if anyone out in TV land wants to send a message to my county commissioners and tell them to get me an AV person, go at it. All right, with that, let's go back. Oh, but we are skipping that witness, not because of the technology, but just because of scheduling. So we're going to try it again next week, and then it won't work again. But anyway.
The state calls Benjamin Botson to the stand. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter now presenting before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you can have a seat. If you could please introduce yourself to the jury.
Name is Benjamin Botson. I'm an investigator with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, currently assigned to the Intelligence Division.
I'm going to move this microphone down so you project quite well, but a little bit louder for me. And what is your assignment with the Sheriff's Office?
I'm assigned to the Intelligence Division as part of the Digital Forensic Lab. My primary responsibility is the obtaining and analyst and storage of digital evidence.
What is your background in order to have a position like that?
Started training in 2016 with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center's basic introduction to digital evidence. I then got my assignment to this unit in 2019, where I attended a series of classes through the National White Collar Crime Center in both computer and mobile forensics. In May of 2019, I attended the International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists course, which is a 2-week course taught in Orlando, Florida, specifically about computer forensics and digital storage. After that, they've got a 4-month peer review period where you work through a series of problems with somebody that's certified that coaches you through the process before taking an actual final exam. Completed that process, obtained that certification. I've also taken multiple classes through a vendor known as Cellbrite, whose primary business is in digital and cell phone forensics. I've taken their 3 certification tracks, which is the operator, the analyst, and then their capstone certification, the Cellbrite Certified Mobile Examiner. And then I've taken a handful of other classes in other areas of forensics, including vehicles and drones.
You mentioned some certificates. Can you tell the jury about what certificates you possess in digital forensics?
So through Cellbrite, I hold the Cellbrite Certified Mobile Examiner. That's their capstone certification for the Cellbrite system in digital forensics, specifically in mobile devices. I hold the certification through that IASIS group. And then I also hold 3 certifications through Burla for vehicle forensics.
What is, did you say IASIS?
IASIS,
Yes, what is that?
An International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists.
You mentioned a lot of digital forensics experience, but you're also post-certified. Can you tell the jury about that?
I was hired at the Sheriff's Office in 2008, attended the basic mandate course in January, or completed the basic mandate course in January of 2010, getting my state certification as a peace officer. Then I've since taken a series of courses to get both my intermediate and advanced certifications through the state of Georgia, through the Post Council, as well as a field training officer certification.
And is digital forensics a field that's constantly evolving?
It is every day.
And do you have continuing education both voluntarily and hours that you need to meet each year?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that, please?
So through the various vendors that affiliate with Cellbrite, Magnet Forensics, the National White Collar Crime Center, they all host training classes, new technology updates, webinars. to just keep the information fresh. I also read most of the major release notes that come out from both Android, iOS, and Windows just to keep up with the technology. And then each certification has a certain requirement as far as recertification goes, and I've maintained those since they've been obtained. And those are typically through providing both training hours, and some of them have a knowledge-based checkup at the recertification time.
We've been talking a lot about digital forensics. Can you describe to the jury sort of what digital forensics is?
So, digital forensics is just forensics on anything digital. So it's looking at a hard drive, what files are there, what files were there, through a process, and using scientific principles. You can see what's there, what's not there. Same thing for mobile devices and other devices. So utilizing a process and a series of tools to uncover the digital information that's stored on devices.
At this time, Judge, the state would move to admit Detective Botsong as an expert in digital forensics.
Okay.
It's an investigator Botsong. Did you ask to become involved in the case against Melody Farris?
Yes.
How so?
So the original examiner that had participated in this case early on passed due to complications from COVID. And in preparation for this case, I was asked to come on and do some validation and some further work on the digital evidence.
Did you train under that investigator?
Yes.
So when you say validation, what does that mean?
So every file that we do, and as I mentioned in the introduction, it is a scientific process if you follow the steps in your best practices. There's a series of checks that happen on all of our data. So when it comes to a hard drive, we're not necessarily just plugging the hard drive into a computer and taking a look at it. We're using specific software following that specific process. So for a computer hard drive, we actually plug that into a device that is specifically designed and created to prevent alteration to that hard drive. So I plug it in a method where I'm not writing back to the hard drive. And then we make a copy of that hard drive. And during that copying process, my computer's completing, or any of the computers that are doing it are completing a set of mathematical calculations that are known as a hash. And it's just a complicated math formula run across data that comes out with a series of numbers. Now, that is both done as a data integrity feature and so that anybody that comes behind you can go through and run any program that's capable of conducting a hash, and as long as you're selecting the same hash algorithm that I do, you could take a hard drive that I imaged and worked on 5 years ago, run this calculation, and you'll get the same results. So in my validation process, it is exactly that. The known hash values are stored in the file itself. So I'd be able to take those files, load it into the application, run this process, and the numbers match from the initial copying of that hard drive or the device containing data.
You also took original images from some of the devices. Is that also what part of your task was later on in the case? EO1 files.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
I did make some files for this case.
You what?
I said I had made some files for this case, yes.
So what I want to specifically chat with you about is you specifically looked at the CPAP machine that was found in Mr. Farris's bedroom, the Dell computer found in the basement, and the trail camera. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And you went through and actually analyzed the data within those items.
Yes, I did.
Okay. I want to start with the trail camera. Can you tell the jury where you began validating Kevin's work in the trail camera extraction?
So, when working with Kevin, he had his files organized on our server from the initial extractions he had done when he copied the SD card from the trail camera. So the first thing I do is load it into a piece of software. I use one called Forensic Explorer made by a company named Get Data. And initially the first thing I select is to actually run that hash validation, to run that mathematical formula to make sure that that data has maintained its integrity since it was originally obtained by the original analyst. In this case, all those numbers matched, which to me confirmed that nothing had changed with that data since it was initially copied. Then Forensic Explorer also has features to be able to display those files as if it was a drive. So it can make it look like you had just plugged that drive into the computer. Then it also has some advanced features to see certain other files that can't exist there, whether they've been deleted or temporary or hidden.
Do you know at the time when you are extracting data from, in this case it was an SD card, do you know what it's going to pull? Does it always pull all of the deleted information? Does it pull all of the saved information?
So
Describe
it will pull what is there. So whether or not I expect deleted information is going to depend on, if it is full, if there's free space on there, just by the nature of how computers store data. So if there's a bunch of free space, you can't expect to see deleted items on there. If a drive is completely full, you're less likely to see more deleted data because that space has been utilized by new files.
The files that you pulled, did it pull full photo files, JPEGs?
It did for a lot of them, and then it also showed some file entries where the software was reading that at one point in time there was a file there, but the file content itself did not exist. So there were a bunch of files and then a bunch of entries of prior files.
When you pulled, when you put that data into Forensic Explorer, did it pull a little bit more than what Kevin's had originally pulled?
And so Kevin had done some reports and some output. I did not go back and look at his initial examination files. So I don't know if I was looking at what he had looked at and he had selected certain items for output. So that's a difficult question to
Okay, so
answer, but it's...
When you pulled it, what do you mean by entry files?
So just like the front of a book, your computer storage keeps a index of what files are there. So it's just kind of a list of entries that contain files. And then depending on the file type, it will link to where those files are on the disk. If that area had been overwritten by a new file, or that part of the hard drive is needed by a larger file, those entries are still there and I can read the entries, but the data for the file itself is no longer there.
Okay. At this time, state we've moving to evidence, state exhibit box on.
No. I submit.
All right. Josh, if you could pull up the TVs, please. Judge, could you turn on the television? Oh, sure. Thank you. All right, investigator, I'm showing you bot song 9. So essentially the file from the trail camera SD card. And I want to pull up, let's see, this file within that exhibit named 18-73198 images from SD card. are these images that were pulled by Mr. Castellano from the SD card?
Yes, they were.
And it has the date of the file creation. Is that when the device created that photo?
Yes, based on the time settings on that device itself, that is the date it's reporting that the photo was taken, or the file was created.
And then down here, what does this mean to you?
That the file had been deleted.
Okay. So this first photo appears to have been deleted. The first, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were deleted, and then moving on from 8 down were not deleted. So I'm going to pull those up individually, but I first want to walk through each data on each photo. So for this photo, this was 7/2/18, 4:50 a.m., and it appears there's a raccoon, some animal.
Yes.
Your knowledge of trail cams, is it a motion sensor?
Yes.
Okay. So it'll take a photo when it senses motion.
Yes, it will.
Okay. And then on this one, file number 2, 7/3/18, 2:20 p.m. I think there might be a squirrel in there somewhere. Ah, yes, there he is on the tree. And that was deleted?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then 7/4, 3:24 p.m. I believe we have another squirrel that triggered that photo. Also deleted?
Yes.
And then July 4th, 2018, 5:53 p.m. We got another squirrel over here,
Yes.
and that was also deleted?
Yes.
Okay. And this appears to be a person walking by on the 5th
Correct.
at 12:05 p.m. Deleted. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. And then the 6th file, 7/5/18, 12:06, also deleted.
Yes, it is.
I think this is the last one, and this appears to be a male walking up, possibly walking up to the camera, also deleted from the 5th.
Yes.
Okay, and then this image was created on the 5th, but this says false. Does that mean that was on the SD card, not deleted?
Correct.
Okay. Same for this photo for the 6th.
Yes.
And then this appears to be an SO employee on the 6th, 12:42 a.m.
Yes.
Not deleted.
Correct.
Okay. Another SO not deleted on the 6th.
Correct.
Okay. Looks like another sheriff's office employee with badge on the 6th, not deleted.
Correct.
And then another few moments later, also on the 6th, not deleted.
Correct.
And it appears it's moving. In this photo, 12:51 a.m. on the 6th.
Yes.
And then do you recognize any of this in the background here on the 6th?
I don't recognize the background, but that does look like one of our shirts.
Okay, so it's SO employee.
I
And then
believe so.
the last one from the 6th at 12:53 a.m. not deleted.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So it appears, let me pull that back up. This was the only one from the 3rd, which was at 2:20 p.m. And that's that squirrel there on the tree. And then a couple on the 4th of 2 squirrels. And then it moves to the 5th?
Yes.
Okay. Next, I want to talk to you about something a little more complex. Did you have the opportunity to look at the Dell computer located in the basement of the Farris house?
Not the computer itself, but they copy of the hard drive, yes.
Okay, so the hard drive was imaged,
It was.
and that was a bit-by-bit copy?
Yes, it was.
And you had the opportunity to look through that copy of the hard drive?
Yes.
What was it that you were looking for?
I was asked to determine a last point of when it was used or somebody had logged into it.
So sort of user,
Looking for looking for artifacts of human interaction with the computer.
so for computers, do they have, can the system itself push out tasks onto the computer without somebody actually sitting in front of it?
Yes.
And are you able to tell the difference between a task that a human would perform on a computer versus possibly the system performing a task?
A lot of the times I am. There are a certain small amount of instances where it's difficult to tell.
Where it's difficult to tell?
Yes.
So this image of this hard drive that you looked at, I want to walk through your report. I guess I'll just move it into Evidence States Exhibit Box on 7.
No.
Which is your Dell report. And I can go ahead and give you this, and I can look at a digital copy if you would like. I'm just going to start with page 1 and kind of walk through. And hopefully, in layman's terms, describe the very technical work you did on this. All right. So on your first page here, what is this first box for computer information?
So a computer has a place where a bunch of the information on operation instructions and who it belongs to and other information is stored, called the registry. And in this case, this is a selective output of that information. In the first box itself, shows that it is a Windows machine and it gives you the install date, but the more important part of this is pulling the registered owner.
Which says what?
In this case, it says G. Farris.
Excuse me. Okay, and then time zone information. Why is this important for you?
It gives me which time zone the computer is set in, so that way when I'm doing any sort of analysis work with any of the files involving times, I know which time zone I'm looking at. And it's actually fairly common for a computer to be in the wrong time zone. So just to make sure I'm getting the times correct, we look at this entry.
Do you often have to convert time zones when you are analyzing digital evidence?
Yes.
And in this case, for this computer, were certain sections that you were looking at in different time zones? Or did they all appear to be consistently in UTC or Eastern Time?
Everything was either in the UTC value or in Eastern Time.
What is UTC?
It is the Universal Coordinated Time, or as they used to teach it, Greenwich Mean Time, which is in England, where it's just there's no compensation to the time zone. While in Georgia, we are either 4 or 5 hours behind that timeline.
And then I'm going to move down to the computer name. This computer had a name. What was the name?
It's Basement PC.
Okay. Pretty self-explanatory there. All right, I'm going to move on to your section 1. And I've titled these sections just to keep them straight. Chrome downloads. What is Chrome?
Chrome is a internet browser that is made by Google.
Why did you decide to look at internet browsers for user intervention?
That's one of the both easier and more common areas to see information on usage, as a lot of the use of a computer nowadays is becoming internet browser based.
Okay, so we started with Chrome. And it appears that these are in UTC, so what does that mean for you?
So in this case, that is in that coordinated time and not compensated to Eastern. So we would have to subtract 4 hours, because in July, our time offset would be 4 hours. So that
Eastern time.
to get to the time that it would be here in Eastern time.
So these were the last downloads that you pulled right here that you took a screenshot of?
Yeah, that was the 3 most recent Chrome downloads.
Okay, and they appear to be PDF files. Is that accurate right here?
Yes.
And the user downloaded them, and it appears saved it onto the desktop. Is that what that means?
Yes.
You located that same file that was downloaded in a desktop folder.
Correct.
Okay. And that was on July 3rd, 2018, and the Eastern time would be 1:51:09 p.m.
So the download was showing slightly before that, but the 151:03 is the download, and then the file time itself, located in the download folder, was 6 seconds later.
Right here.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to Chrome history. This would be his, or the user's browser history.
Yes.
Okay. For Chrome specifically.
Correct.
Okay. You noted this website, and you might call it something different, but I'm going to use website. Citrix. Can you describe that to the jury right here?
Citrix itself is a big company that offers a lot of applications, primarily to small, medium, sometimes larger businesses. It has anything from some remote computer applications to file sharing, to a varied other set of business tasks that can be logged into from a browser.
And you sort of focused on the access to citrix1.er. Can you describe that to the jury, why you focused on that?
Burr.com is one of the names that I was informed belonged to the law firm that Mr. Farris had worked for. I don't know that part of the arrangement, but and that just as far as establishing usage, getting onto a corporate resource and accessing work materials, I flagged it as the information I was presented was this individual was pretty much always working and always accessing work resources.
And are these times, these are UTC, so we would subtract 4?
Yes.
Okay. So let's move up here to LinkedIn. Are you familiar with what LinkedIn is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's, in light terms, it's social media for business, and allows you to make a professional resume style profile and list accolades and friend and recommend business colleagues, as well as it does have some hiring features, some job hunting features, as well as some news articles that are posted by both professional outlets and individuals.
And it appears that the history for Chrome here, the last entry was 7/3/2018 at 2:32 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. And then we move on to Internet Explorer, which is just another browser, yes? Internet browser?
At the time, yes. Not so much anymore, but
RIP Internet Explorer. Okay. So this is also in UTC time.
yes.
Is that accurate? Okay. Now we got a couple of excuse me, later entries here. So I want to talk about the Internet Explorer history that you pulled from this computer. Can you walk through you made a note here. Can you walk the jury through this opinion that you concluded?
So that top entry listed July 4th shows a visit to a website that is titled msftconnecttest.com. I did a little bit of reading into the function of that task and what that task is, and found that it is a system task done by Microsoft that is essentially just a check-in to make sure that Microsoft applications and programs are operating effectively. So, for Outlook to work correctly, Teams, if you use Teams, which is a chat and video calling and meeting application, it will reach out when either you're booting into Windows or an application is about to be used, just to reach out to Microsoft to do that initial, hey, I'm over here, everything's okay, to check that connection status to make sure that your interaction with Microsoft products is a seamless experience.
Was that the only log for the 4th?
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk about the ones that are below it. This is in UTC, so is this 7/4 technically 1:14 a.m.? Explain what the actual time and date of these entries are.
So that would be on the actual night of 7/2.
Okay.
So you'd
So the
subtract
last-
4 hours back, you would get to the 2nd of July.
Okay. So we'll jump down to these down here. So these are the 3rd. Well, I guess, except, are these in chronological order? What kind of order are these in?
Yes, they're should be organized by timestamp.
So we've got a couple of AMs here, and then we've got the 7/3, 5:49 p.m.
Yes, and that would be 1:49 p.m. on the afternoon of the 3rd of July in 2018.
Okay, and so all of these for AM would actually be on the 2nd if you convert the time accurately.
Correct.
Okay, so then for 5:49 p.m., 5:47 p.m., that's 1:49 and 1:47 p.m.
Yes.
Okay. So between the 3rd and the 4th, 1:49 p.m. appears to be the latest Internet Explorer visit from a user.
Yes.
All right. Move down to event logs. What are event logs?
So Windows keeps logs of pretty much everything that happens on your computer as you're using it. I can store, error logs, install logs, but one of the more important areas to me is the actual login, logout logs. It will actually have a entry into a file, which is actually just named the event logs, when a user or a task logs in or accesses system resources, among some other information.
So what event log is 4624? What does that tell you?
So the 4624 is actually the code that it attaches to login entries.
To log in entries?
Yes.
So when somebody actually sits down and types in their password and logs into the computer?
It will create one of those, yes.
Okay. So for this Dell, and is this in, it says UTC, so we have to subtract 4 again?
Yes.
Okay. So on the 3rd, the last login was when?
The last login itself is at 3:42.
So that's this one highlighted right here.
Correct.
Okay. And then you had two types of logons. You broke that down on your next page here, and we're still on bot song 7. Can you describe that to the jury?
So each one of those entries, well, it's a simplified view that was on the prior page. Each one of those entries contains all of this other information inside of that file. So pulling this one as an example, there is multiple different types of logins that Windows will log. There's network login, there's user password, there's a system task that accesses the system, and those are all inside these 4624 log entries. They put a difference right in the second block of information. It's right there at the top of the page now. Under login information, the login type, it has a number next to it.
That's right here.
Correct.
Okay.
So in this case, the login type number 2 is the one that I can attribute directly to a user entering a username and passcode or a PIN to log into the system. The other one I was seeing that was in these as well was a entry number 5, which is a system task, was logging into the system.
We'll get to that one in a second. So the last one that you could attribute to a person was on the 3rd. Is this Eastern time right now?
Yes, this
Okay.
one has been compensated, and this was the last type 2, which is a user-initiated login that I could locate on this system.
Okay. And then you mentioned a type 5, so let's move on to the type 5. Okay, so here you're just describing the types. So talk about, you've already kind of described it, but now that they know there are 2 types of logins, describe again the type 5 logon.
It's when a service starts, which is just a process that's running on your computer, and a service account, which is just an account that's exactly for these tasks to run. Service task logs in and utilizes resources or performs a task on that system.
So not a human.
Correct.
And you noted that there was a login type 5 at 342? Well, all the way until 342.
Correct. So there was some intermittent of these tasks that were running all the way until that 342 timestamp.
And is that on the 3rd?
Yes.
July 3rd of 2018?
Correct.
Okay. And then you noted application event log, an Outlook error. Can you describe why you put this in your report?
Just while I was going through all of this complex logs, I was looking just for signs of user interaction or trying to narrow down the last use of this system. And the same way Windows captures those login events among other events, it also has a log specifically for applications. So anytime an application has something that is loggable, it'll have an entry in the system. In this case, what we're looking at is the Outlook application itself, which is a program for email, had entered an error code into this log saying that the attachments to the message was too large.
So then did you go back to Mr. Farris's emails and see if he had sent one with attachments? An email.
I went back actually to his phone and looked into the email list to see if there had anything inside that time frame that would be consistent with this error. And at fairly close to the same time, there was an email being sent from the phone with some larger attachments to it.
At 1:55 p.m.
Yes,
on July 3rd.
correct.
Okay. These are the attachments that were too large.
Yes.
Okay. Thing I wanted to discuss. Okay, I don't know if we really discussed this. So on the 4th, you mentioned that this MSFT Connect is a system push.
Yes.
Okay, that could be triggered how?
One of the things that I discovered during reading about specifically that task itself was in that check to the Microsoft servers. It happens when you first go to use a computer, whether it was sleeping, whether it was off, whether you were just about to log into the system. And one of the common places that it had been seen is you're first turning on your computer, or you're first opening the lid, or you move the mouse, hit the key press to get to the password screen. That Windows task is going to try to reach out to Microsoft to make sure those applications will function. So with laptops, if the lid's closed, a lot of the times individuals will have their system set to go to sleep or in a low power mode. So the most likely scenario for this one is either the system was sleeping, the screen was off, or the lid was closed, and when the system powered on or came back awake or came out of low power mode, it went to connect to that Microsoft service to get ready for the user. So the most likely thing that occurred was either somebody had moved a mouse or that a lid had been opened.
And that was on the 4th, and we would have to subtract 4, so that'd be 11:09 a.m.
10:09.
I'm sorry, you're right. Okay. 10:09 a.m. on the 4th.
Yes.
Okay. And you can attribute that to the computer waking up, or essentially Microsoft getting ready for a user.
Yes.
So coming out of sleep mode, etc.
Correct.
Okay. Were there any tasks beyond that one?
No.
Okay. Now we're going to move on from the Dell and talk about the CPAP machine. At this time, Judge State would move to enter into evidence bot song 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10.
All right. No objections?
No.
All right, they're admitted.
Thank you. Okay. You had the opportunity to essentially pull the data from a CPAP machine in this case, or the SD card that was located within the CPAP machine.
Kind of this similar methodology to the trail camera itself. The CPAP machine had initially been imaged by the prior examiner, Kevin, and I started off with that copy of the SD card from the CPAP machine.
So it was data from the SD card that Kevin had imaged.
Correct.
And saved.
Yes.
Okay. And you went ahead and validated that and then figured out what to do with that data.
Yes.
Fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. How did you figure out what to do with that data? Because it didn't come in these nice little tables initially, correct?
Correct.
Okay, tell the jury about that.
So CPAP machines, keep a log of all the sleep events and everything else, and they're typically proprietary to whatever software or cloud-based solution that your doctor's office would use. The primary intent is to share your sleep data with your medical providers. So usually they're kind of walled in their own garden of needing to be opened in the proprietary software or a cloud account. I initially looked into how to read that data through this specific provider. One I believe was named AirSense, and learned that it is either paid software or a cloud account provided by a medical provider. Further research through the forensic community and some of the communities that I'm involved with online as part of my continuing education and keeping up with the trends. There was an article that I located about an open source project that created a free-to-use software application that was open source that had been specifically made to make an environment and software where you'd be able to look at the data yourself. So in this case, I downloaded that specific application after researching everything that it had done and talked to another examiner who had prior experience with that software application itself, and then created a instance on one of my forensics machines, installed it, and then I was actually able to load the SD card information into the software.
Into readable tables and graphs and data.
And then it took it and made it into where, instead of just seeing the file dates and times, which were pretty much all that were available until I discovered this application, into actually being able to view the data in a actually quite nice presentable format.
All right, I'm going to open bot song 1. It says CPAP statistics standard. So is this the program that helped you load all this?
Yes.
Okay. Oscar usage statistics. And this is the data that was on the CPAP. Was it an SD card?
So I took the image of the SD card, and then I had to export it onto another drive, basically making a separate copy of the SD card, and then I put that into the system running Oscar, and imported all that information from the original files that I had just exported.
Okay, so this breaks it down. Most recent 7/2/2018. Can you explain to the jury how the CPAP calculated days?
So this specific vendor, AirSense, both on its website and in the profile, when I selected in Oscar, or this application, that this was an AirSense machine, they both advised that it kept time slightly strange, and it kind of just gave it to you as an acknowledgement that so you'd have the understanding of what you're looking at. Instead of the normal switching dates at midnight, like all of us do, seeing CPAP machines are primarily used at night, its date change is actually set for 12 noon. So between 12 noon all the way until noon the next day is one date. So the dates appear to be behind. In this instance, and it'll clarify a little bit in one of my next reports, but this most recent 7/2, according to how this machine keeps dates, is from noon on the 2nd all the way until 11:59 a.m. on the 3rd.
Okay. And we'll get to see that in one of the next exhibits. So here it says days not used, 0. What does that tell you?
So, and this report is broken down into all the categories I had available. It has detections on how many days this device was not used. So, in the last night, it's showing that it was, double negative, not used. So this device was used on the last night. There was a log. In the last week, the last 30 days, and the last 6 months, it reported 0 days that it was not used. So it had been used every night in what it's reporting the last 6-month period. And then within the last year, it was showing a 60-day period of not showing use.
Why was that?
I believe the first reported entry was less than a year. This file goes all the way back to July, and if you look towards the top, the initial initialization date is in September.
So there's about 2 months there where either he didn't have it or he had another one or wasn't
Correct.
reading. Okay. All right. Let's move on to bot song 2. Overview report. And this is usage from, it appears September 1st to July. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Okay.
should be September 1st to July 2nd.
July 2nd. Okay. And there's not a void in this graph to show that it was not used one day. Fair?
Correct.
Okay. And then does this graph here show the times that the user, presumably Gary, the times of his sessions of the CPAP being on?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't know about pressure. Okay, so bot song 3 breaks it down a little bit. This might be similar to 1. So this is a reporting for 305 days, and he used days. Does that say 305 days used?
Yes.
Okay. Out of how many days?
305.
Okay. Is this broken down by month? Bot song 4?
It is.
Okay. Is July 2018 the most recent?
Yes.
Okay. And this has percentage of days used, 100%? Is that what that says?
Yes.
Okay. It also has an average of how many hours that user sleeps?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Bot song. Let's go to overview last week. Usage from June 26th to July 2nd?
Yes.
Okay. And then, all right, so you mentioned that it kept time from noon to one day and then 11:59 a.m. to the following day. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. And so what is this table telling you right here?
This is the reported data from the last entry that was available, the one that was marked in all of the graphs as July 2nd. But in that date example and all the disclaimers they gave, if you actually look at the start time, the start time is logged as 2018 0703 at 0037 or just after midnight. And then the end time has the same July 3rd at 0748, so 7:48 in the morning. So even though the log file is showing July 2nd, we clearly see that the start and the end date are on both July 3rd.
I'm going to pull up last one, bot song 10. What are we looking at here?
And this is a screenshot inside the Oscar application, something that I was not easily able to get into a report, so I took a screenshot of the last session that was available, the one that was showing the log file as 7.2, showing both the date a little better clarified as 7/3/2018 with the start of 0037 or 12:37 a.m. and an end at 7:48 a.m. with a total time of 7:11. And then it shows some CPAP, other statistics that I'm not as familiar with.
And that was the last session that the AirSense logged.
Correct.
That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Good morning, Investigator Botson.
Good morning.
It's nice to cross you. I'm going to start with the SD card stuff. So, do you know who deleted the SD cards?
I do not.
Okay. Well, so you didn't delete them, right?
Correct.
Okay, because Scott Farris testified earlier that last week that he was the one who deleted it. So it is your opinion that, I know it's from the top, I believe. So this one, it says 1, it's got the file name and all that, and that's the photograph. So this is photograph 1, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the last photograph that was deleted, correct?
Yes.
Because that says deleted is true, and that individual who was previously identified as Scott Farris is walking up to the camera, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then you got another one that is not deleted, and that appears to be the same individual walking past the camera again.
Yes.
Okay. And then you've got just things on the 6th, and these are you weren't there, but those are Sheriff's Office investigators.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So, I want to go to your review of the Dell. So, I got my notes on your copy. So your testimony is that with the Chrome download, that this time, that is UTC time?
Correct.
Okay, and so that would put that time 4 hours later, so at 1:51?
Correct.
And it was at that point that Gary Farris, or presumably someone, was downloading a PDF?
It just, a user of the system downloaded a PDF.
Okay, a user.
Yes.
Do you know, was this computer, was it password protected?
Yes.
Okay. How do you get in something like that?
So, Windows is designed to prevent access from the device itself. And unless you have some of the more advanced security features enabled, like encryption, that security is not designed to prevent somebody from removing the hard drive and plugging it into another computer and being able to read it, which in our standard practice, that's what we do. We do not use the individual device that comes into us. We remove the hard drive and plug it into that right blocked device and access it that way.
Okay. I want to go here. Make sure that yours that's not too good. Zoom in a little bit. So, I want to clear something up. This event ID 4624, that is an ID associated with a regular normal login?
It's just the login in general.
Login in
There's
general.
not a regular normal.
Well, because you had talked about login 2s, login 5s, and things like that. So, is that a login 2? Or you don't know the difference? You can't tell the difference based on that ID?
The ID itself, no, but that is available further down.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to ask, because here we've got an event on, it looks like July the 3rd, 7:42 p.m., which is UTC.
Correct.
So that would put that at what, 2:42? 3:42.
42.
So at 3:42 p.m., there's some type of event going on the computer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that one I specifically noted below is one of the ones I attributed to the system tasks.
Yeah. So we got an event going on. Because I think you put in your summary report that basically Gary logged on at 1:20. And then there is a login 5 at 3:42. Right?
Correct.
Okay. And with because Ms. Frankish had gone through with you, these are all UTC times too, all of these websites that he was visiting.
Yes.
So he was at least on reading this. Congress trumps regulators regarding loans. That would have been at 2:32. He was reading that article, or the user was presumably reading that article.
The user had navigated to it. Whether they read or not is not something I'm able to see.
True. They were at least on that website.
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm assuming your testimony was that event at 3:42 is some type of Microsoft automatic.
The 340,
something that it does?
The 342 one was one of the ones with the Type 5 login, which is those system tasks.
And you can't have a Type 5 login while you're logged in under Type 2?
No, those do happen.
That does happen?
Yes.
Okay. So you can't distinguish that type of event between a Type 2 and a Type 5?
I mean, I can distinguish between a Type 2 and a Type 5. Some of the screenshots are showing exactly that, where
Yes.
that information is available. Looking at the list like this, you cannot.
Okay. Well, this is your report, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And yet again, that's all 7.3. And I guess there is another one under the Internet Explorer. Right here on the 4th at 2:09 p.m. It was your opinion that was only some type of Microsoft security update or some type of Microsoft update?
Not an update, but reaching out to Microsoft servers to ensure that a Microsoft application was able to function properly.
Okay. And so is that's in UTC time as well?
It is.
Okay. What time would that have been not UTC time?
That would have been at 10:09:38 a.m. on the 4th.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm not going to go over all the CPAP information with you, but essentially the gist of your testimony and your analysis of the CPAP machine was that Gary used his CPAP at least every day according to what you can tell from that one SD card.
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware that Gary had gone to the hospital several times during the year, or at least one time during the year of 2018?
No.
When you're calculating that or trying to figure this out, did the DA's office tell you to take the CPAP? I know not take it. You weren't there when it was taken. But did they reach out to you and say, hey, look at that CPAP SD card. Let's see what's going on?
The initial output from the initial investigation of the SD card just showed a bunch of files and not a bunch of information. I was asked to see if I could navigate it into a readable format.
Okay. So essentially from the CPAP, you learned that Gary used it every day, and the last time he used it was on the 3rd.
Correct.
On the 3rd when he took it off.
Correct.
All right. And going to the Dell, you were able to learn that somebody used that computer last time being later in the day, July the 3rd.
Yeah, not later in the day, but that afternoon, log in at 1:20.
Yeah, so somebody logged in and used it.
Correct.
And then there's not a Type 5 login until 3:42.
Correct, and then no logins past that.
No logins past that, but you can actually have a Type 5 login and a Type 2 login at the same time.
Correct.
Okay. No further questions?
How big is the SD card in the trail camera?
I'd have to look. I don't remember off the top of my head.
How many images does it hold?
It had the images presented, and then there was another 20 or 30 images from a couple months prior that were in the deleted as well.
That aren't in your report?
That initial report was for Mr. Castellano or Kevin, who had produced the report based on anything with a July timestamp, I believe.
So we don't know what's on the camera from before the date of this report.
I've seen it and I turned over the files.
So we need to take something outside the presence of
We'll get there. Hold on. So there are images on the camera that were taken that were not displayed to the jury, correct?
Yes.
All right, we'll get to whether there's explanation. All right. Were there images that were not available to be extracted because they had been overwritten?
It's hard to answer it that way, but there were.
You don't know how long it had been up, right?
Correct.
So if it had been up for a year and every month someone goes and deletes the images, eventually it's going to start overwriting it.
Correct.
Does it do that sequentially or does it do that randomly?
The file naming should be sequential, while the deletion is user-based and up to the user.
Does the machine, does the computer inside the trail camera decide when it wants to start rewriting over files based upon when it wants to, or does it go through systematically and deletes the oldest files still on the SD card that's marked for deletion, or will it skip?
So as far as the SD, or as far as the unit itself deleting files, that is a setting that's inside the camera itself, which I do not know as far as the setting of that camera. As far as which entries are overwritten, that's, again, how the camera is programmed.
It's up to the camera to decide when it starts to rewriting over images.
And which sections of the SD card it writes to.
Does it save thumbnails in the metadata?
I believe everything I saw out of it was full images.
All right. The CPAP machine. You didn't attempt to utilize get someone to give you access to the CPAP program approved by the manufacturer?
I had started down that route, and that's when I discovered this open source project, that the open source license project that has the ability to read the make and model for the CPAP machine that we had.
That is not approved by the manufacturer.
Correct.
That is a report format that somebody out there who's interested in this kind of thing created it on its own to extract the software and data and put in some format in some table that they think is appropriate for the data based upon crowdsourcing and other folks that are interested in the same type thing.
That's pretty accurate for all open source projects.
Right. Not approved by the manufacturer who created it or their software that they have designed to go with the system.
Correct.
So it might be correct and it might not be. It could be the same as if I wrote it.
The documentation I read said it had full support for the CPAP device, and
From
the
other people who wrote the code to
Yes.
extract the data and put it in the tables.
correct.
All right. Anybody else got any questions based upon my questions?
I'm sorry? I have no follow-up, Judge.
What are these photos that you didn't turn over?
I mean, I had provided everything that I had out. There was photos from a couple months prior of more raccoons and more deer and what looked like
Judge, do you think we
some
should
gardening.
take this outside the presence of the jury?
No. Go ahead, Mr. Ray.
What do you mean a couple of months before?
There were some images from, I believe it was March and April, that were just other animals and other things crossing in front of the cameras.
Okay, so what about June, a whole month before? You said March and April. May, June?
Not that I remember.
So there's a whole month that there's not even a squirrel on this farm in front of that deer figure?
Correct. And
Who told you what to turn over?
I turned over everything that I had.
But no, you didn't, because you're testifying that there were other things that you didn't turn over. Right? You just said it.
I mean, I provided the raw data from the devices itself and produced every report that I was asked to.
Who asked you to produce this report?
DA's office as
Okay.
part of discovery.
Did they tell you to limit the photographs that you turn over?
So this report itself was a report that was created by Mr. Castellano upon his initial work. I believe I said earlier that he had pulled the information from July
Okay.
and put it into this report.
Okay. So is it your testimony now that you took those other images that you found that you claim have no evidentiary value? Did you turn those over to the DA's office?
Yes.
Okay. So they have those images.
I turned over the raw data from the SD card to the district attorney's office.
Okay. Did that raw data that you sent over, did it look like this or something similar like this?
No, this is a report that was completed and had information from the month of July as pulled from the camera.
Okay. Is there anything else that you have turned over that you haven't heard us talk about today or ask you about? Photographs or any other thing that was maybe relevant?
I mean, I've turned over all the digital files that I had to the district attorney's office.
Okay. So your testimony is you turned over those other photographs,
So
correct?
I did not, the same way as I don't hand over each individual file to a computer.
Mm-hmm.
I turned over the files from the SD card.
So you're saying you turned over everything that was on that SD card?
A copy of the SD card was sent up.
Okay. And so if the copy of the SD card that I get only has 11 photographs, that's not correct, or I'm sorry,
I mean, I don't,
16 photographs.
I don't know what you were provided, but if you were only provided something with 16 images, then
What you turned over was more than that.
it was a SD card, an image of the SD card. So it was a complete copy of the SD card.
Okay. How many photographs were on the SD card?
I don't know.
Not deleted otherwise. Just as best of your recollection.
I mean, complete guess, 30.
30. So if I told you I only had 16, that's half, right? Roughly.
Roughly.
Okay. Now, with what the court had asked you about the program you used to analyze the CPAP statistics, what did you call it again?
The name of the program is called Oscar.
Okay, and that's just a program that you found online?
Correct.
Okay. Open source, which means free.
Yes.
And did that program, because my understanding of your testimony was that you looked at the raw data and put it into, at the request of the DA's office, into some type of readable format, right?
Utilizing a program named Oscar.
Okay. So it's actually the program that put it in this readable format, not you.
I mean, I navigated and generated the reports through the software application.
Yes. But it's actually the software that's organizing it
Correct.
when you put it in.
Yes.
All right. So basically, you're just reading what this report says when
Correct.
it comes out of the other end. It's like a hot dog machine. It's like you put in some information, it tabulates it, and then you read the report it generates.
Correct.
Okay. So you didn't actually do a review of the CPAP machine to make your determinations. You're reading what a computer program did, correct?
That plus the dates from the raw data on the initial CPAP reports that were produced.
While you were inputting that data, did you ever do any tests to make sure that it was operating and functioning correctly?
Looking at the dates and times from the initial CSV file that we had, or the Excel spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet and the initial output just defines a date and time that a log was generated, not the contents of the log, which is where this software application came in and read the contents of those log files.
Okay. Well, here's my question. Did you ever do like a test, like, hey, I need to see if this program is actually working. So let's put in July the 1st and see what it tells me
and see what this program spits out on the other end?
Not specifically like that, no.
Okay. Because what I'm trying to figure out if there's any way that you could have limited the possibility of error. Let me ask you another way. Did you just essentially put in all of the raw data that you could from the CPAP SD card into this program?
Yeah, the only way it allows you to display files, I can't pick and choose what information is inputted into the software application. It is uploaded directly from the SD card.
Okay, so
So-
you have to kind of do it all at one time.
Correct.
All right. So if there was an error in that Oscar program, you wouldn't know, right? Without having to go through and correlate it with all of the raw data that you had.
Correct.
Okay. And yet again, like Judge Cannon had asked you, that program, to the best of your knowledge, isn't licensed by the CVAP manufacturer.
It is not.
Nothing else.
I have no questions, Judge.
I'll ask one more. You can't guarantee that there aren't images that aren't missing from the SD card of the trail camera
I,
that weren't deleted and overwritten while, start over. There are multiple photographs of the trail camera continuing to take pictures after the event. No one turned it off.
it obviously was turned off at a certain point.
At some point after it took about 8 images
Seeing
on the
last-
scene and in your office.
See, I was about to say, seeing the last picture was an individual in my office. I imagine that's when they would
So
turn it
no
off.
one turned it off or just took the SD card out.
I do not know the answer to that one. But yes, it would either been turned off or somebody took the SD card.
But not for some period of time.
Correct.
You can't guarantee that there aren't images that were deleted that weren't overwritten by the other photographs that continued to be taken by the camera.
Correct.
I have no follow-ups, Judge.
All right, you can step down. We'll take a mid-morning break. Well, yeah, we're still gonna take a break. We're gonna break in an hour for lunch, but we'll try to take it short.